Welcome to the deep dive, where we dig into those policies most people just scroll past. This time, we're taking a look at OpenAI's data policies. People want to know, how is OpenAI using my data? Is it safe? What can I actually do about it?
It's a jungle out there.
It really is. So we're going to break it all down, looking at their privacy policy, their whole consumer privacy statement, that enterprise privacy overview, even their EU privacy policy.
You've got a lot to unpack.
We do. And luckily, we've got expert speaker here to help us make sense of it all.
Glad to be here. I think a good place to start is, well, what data are we even talking about? OpenAI collects a ton of information from you.
Yeah, they do. Everything from your name, your contact info, all that basic stuff, but also things like, your IP address, how you're using their website.
Exactly. It's all tracked automatically. They call it, technical information. Your IP, what kind of device you're on, even just the date and time you were on their site.
So they're basically tracking your every move, even if you're not logged in or anything.
Pretty much. And it's not just about what you do on their website either. They're also collecting data on what you share on ChatGPT.
Oh, right. So everything you're typing in, any files you upload, all that.
All of it. They call it user content. Basically, anything you put into ChatGPT, your feedback, everything.
And that's how they make ChatGPT, smarter, right?
Yeah.
By using all our conversations to train it.
Exactly. They're very upfront about that, using user content to train their models, including ChatGPT. So your prompts, the things you ask it, that's all fair game.
Okay, see, now that makes me a little nervous. Are my late-night ChatGPT conversations going to be on some public database somewhere?
That's a valid concern. But OpenAI has said they don't use this data to, build individual profiles on people or target you with ads or anything.
It's more about improving the system as a whole, not necessarily keeping tabs on individuals.
Right. Though it is a massive amount of information. And they've even said they get data from other sources, too.
Really? What else?
Things like publicly available data on the internet. That can be anything, social media posts, comments, articles. They use that to train their models, too.
Publicly available? What does that even mean exactly?
Basically, if it's online and it's accessible, it's fair game.
So even if I'm careful about what I share directly with ChatGPT, they could be using my, witty comments from that Reddit thread about the best pizza toppings.
That's the thing about public data, right? It might be public, but did you ever agree to have it used to train some AI? It brings up some interesting questions about how data is used in this day and age.
So they're gathering all this data, but what are they actually doing with it? I mean, they say they use it for different things, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's not just about, storing it somewhere. OpenAI is pretty clear that they use your data to improve their services, develop new stuff, even conduct research.
Okay, so they're not just keeping tabs on you. They're actually using it to make their AI better.
Exactly. And they're upfront about using what you share on ChatGPT, your prompts, those conversations, to train their models. That's how ChatGPT learns.
Right. Right, but they're not just using this data themselves, are they?
Yeah.
They share it with others too, right?
They do. OpenAI is transparent about sharing data with third parties, but they're specific about why. For example, they need to share some information with vendors and service providers, for things like hosting, customer support, cloud computing, that kind of thing.
So it's like contractors who need access to keep things running.
Exactly. But that does mean those vendors have access to some of your data. You're trusting that OpenAI is choosing those partners carefully.
That makes sense. Are there other situations where they might share data?
Well, sometimes it's not even a choice, it's the law, right? They might have to disclose data if it's required by law enforcement or to protect OpenAI itself.
Makes sense. What about if, OpenAI gets bought by another company or something? What happens to all that data then?
Good question. OpenAI acknowledges that if there's a merger or a sale, your data could be shared with the new company or their affiliates. It's like when you switch phone carriers, sometimes your data goes with you.
Okay, so they're pretty open about those scenarios. They also mentioned something about business account administrators. What's that all about?
Right, so that's specifically for folks who use ChatGPT Enterprise, those business accounts. If your company uses ChatGPT, your account administrators would have access to your OpenAI data.
So it's not just OpenAI controlling the data. My own employer might have access to what I'm doing on ChatGPT.
Potentially, yes. They even talk about sharing data with employers if you sign up with your work email, something to keep in mind.
For sure. Okay, so we're getting a better picture of how they handle data sharing. But what about our rights as users? Do we have any control over all this, or are we just along for the ride? That's the million-dollar question, right? Do we have any say in all of this? What can we do if we're not cool with how OpenAI is using our data?
Well, the good news is you're not powerless. You actually have a say in how your data gets used.
Okay, so what kind of rights are we talking about here?
OpenAI lists out several rates you have, though they do mention that these can vary depending on, where you are in the world. But generally, you have the right to access your data.
So, like, I can ask to see what they've got on me.
Exactly, like a digital permanent record. You can see what's in that file.
And what if I don't like what I see? Can I just, like, make it disappear?
You can actually request to have your data deleted.
Wait, seriously? They'll just wipe the slate clean?
Well, it's not always quite that simple. They mentioned there might be limitations, like if they're legally required to keep something, but it's still your right to ask.
That's amazing. What about if they get something wrong? Like my birthday is wrong or something like that?
That's where the right to rectification comes in. You can ask them to correct inaccurate data. They need to have the right information about you.
Okay, that makes sense. What about those times where I don't want to delete everything, but I'm not cool with, them using it for research or whatever?
Right, you want some control. Well, that's where you can restrict how they process your data.
So, like, setting boundaries. You can have my data, but don't do that with it.
Exactly. And there's more. You have the right to data portability, too. It means you can have your data transferred to another provider.
Oh, interesting. So it's like taking your data with you.
Exactly. It's becoming more and more important these days. Now, here's another one. What if you change your mind about something you agreed to before?
Like, what do you mean?
Say you were fine with OpenAI using your data for research, but now you're not. You have the right to withdraw your consent.
Oh, wow. So it's not like a one-time decision. I can change my mind.
Absolutely. And finally, you have the right to object. It's broader, but it means you can object to specific ways they're using your data, like for marketing.
So if I see something I don't like, I can speak up.
Precisely. Now, how do you actually do all this? OpenAI has a few ways you can go through your account settings, use their privacy portal, or just email them directly.
So they're making it fairly easy to, like, get in touch and exercise your rights.
They also have a data protection officer, showing they're taking it seriously.
Good to know. What about kids? How are they handling that with ChatGPT being used in schools and all?
Good question. OpenAI is very clear that their services are not for kids under 13. They don't knowingly collect data from them, and they'll delete it if they find any.
That's reassuring. So many kids use this stuff now.
And for anyone under 18, they require parental permission.
Well, that makes sense. Wow, we've covered a ton today. Data collection, how they're using it, sharing it, and our rights as users. As we wrap things up, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Don't just tune out those policies. Be aware of what data OpenAI is collecting and what they're doing with it.
Knowledge is power, right?
Right. And don't be afraid to exercise your rights. OpenAI gives you tools to access, manage, and even delete your data.
It is your data, after all.
Exactly. And last but not least, this is all constantly changing. OpenAI's policies can change, new technologies will pop up, this conversation will keep going, so stay informed and make your voice heard.
Love it. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into OpenAI's data policies. Thanks for joining us today. It's been enlightening for sure. Until next time, everyone, keep reading that fine print. You never know what you might find.